Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com with another episode of the Steelers Preview. And joining me, as always, the three amigos, Bryan Anthony Davis, our podcast producer. What's up, Bryan?
Hey, this has got to be the week, right?
Yeah, we've been saying that for a while, though. our editor, Dave Schofield. What's up, Dave?
Not too much. Shoulders are a little sore from throwing punches, but other than that, I'm all good.
We're not getting into that. Okay. All right. Now, Dave, you will be at the game Sunday, right?
That's the plan. Yeah. I keep saying that's the plan because, like I said, when you have big family events coming up, all of a sudden you're afraid someone's going to throw something on you at the last second because of how things work. But it looks like I'm going to be there. I'm taking my son to his first game. Big Bro Sco's coming with Kyle. Hashtag pay Kyle. So the four of us should be up there. I'm part of the 122 crew. That's Bully Mob Kettle, the artist formerly known as Solarverse. He's part of that. He'll be at the game just a couple rows away from me. So I'll be able to catch up with him. If you're going to be at the game, come see us. 122.
Now, hold on. Isn't it true that they've never won a game that Kyle's gone to?
Why would you even bring that up, Jeff?
No, I want to know why he's going, is what I'm saying.
Why would you bring that up, Jeff?
I want to know, why is he going to this game? They need to win this game. You don't take
I
Kyle.
know they need to win this game.
So you don't take Kyle.
That's why we don't pay Kyle.
Kyle's not banished for all eternity. You know what? It's fun to pick on them when they don't win, but we know it's all fun, but we know really it has no bearing. Well, it doesn't matter if you're sitting at the right spot on the couch or if you're wearing the right jersey. It does matter, though, if you change jerseys. You can't change jerseys during the game. That's a rule, in case you didn't know that. But no, it's all good and fun. But I'm not going to deprive Kyle from Heinz Field just because one Jefferson Bartholomew Hartman thinks that. We know that's nowhere close.
If they lose.
Yeah, but if they do, we can definitely play the blame game.
Then he's off the schneid. All right, let's get things started with some news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Before we get into the injury report, the Steelers took another player and started the clock. They had 3 players on injured reserve. We know that Zach Banner's, his clock, 21-day clock, was started last week. Anthony McFarland's started this week. Guys, my question is, do you think Zach Banner gets reinstated? And do you think he plays this Sunday? Because he could. They can do it whenever. Dave, what do you think?
I'm thinking yes, for one main reason. They had him speak to the media today.
I thought the same thing.
If you're not going to have him speak to the media if he's still another week away. The whole reason they had him speak to the media is to kind of present him as the leader of the offensive line. So that way, when he comes back this weekend and they put him in the lineup, there's really no question about it. That's just, I still don't know how they're going to shake everything out. Who's going to be where? You had a great article about that today at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. But it looks like any player that has been active this season, they will have all of them available. So, and possibly Zach Banner on top of that.
Okay, well, I don't want to get into details yet. I want to let Bryan talk. So, Bryan, do you think the Banner's back this week, or do you think they hold him out for one more?
I can't argue with Dave on that one. I argue with Dave a lot, but on that one, no. I mean, I was thinking, and we were just talking about this a little bit earlier, Jeff, you and I, about he has not been on the injury report. You know, he's been practicing, and if they're going to go ahead and bring them back, they're probably going to play him as well. Yeah.
So before we get into anything else, because this is really important, Captain Underpants is a good friend of all of our shows. He actually put on the screen that Seattle actually has 2 losses, guys, and they're playing on Thursday night. So.
I am praying that they win, because we can actually use Seattle has 2 losses next week. It's Seahawks week next week. I told you guys beforehand, this just besides the Steelers number 1, but this is 1B for me this week. Seattle must win, and they're wearing their action green uniforms.
And I will have to say this. Bryan is backing this up. He is the only member of the BTSC staff. You'll see our staff picks article tomorrow. He's the only one who picked Seattle to win this game on Thursday night.
Well, all right. So
he went with it.
Besides that,
can I bring up one other thing?
Is it about Banner? Because I want to get back to the offense.
Yes, it's about Zach Banner.
Go for it.
It was a question asked in the live chat, which I was going to ask, but since someone else did, I wanted to bring it up. If Zach Banner does come back,
I know what
what are they going to do? What do you say, Jeff?
Carlos Davis goes on IR.
I think you're close.
He hasn't practiced in 3 weeks.
He should have gone on IR 3 weeks ago.
You would think he would have, but what? So who would you say?
I think it could be Rashad Coward because he went
another one
from limited yesterday to where he didn't practice today. So
either one of those, I could see that being the move.
I think it'll be an IR move.
My question I'm going to go throw to Bryan first is Chuks Okorafor has been a full participant the last 2 days. He looks like he's going to be good to go. We know Dan Moore is there. Joe Haig is there. The rest of the offense, Dotson, he's even back. We'll get to the full injury report here in a second. Mm-hmm. If everyone's available, Bryan, what is your starting offensive line this Sunday at 1:00?
I'm about to give you a Dave answer. What should be and what they'll do.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. You have to answer what Bryan's lineup would be, and then what the Steelers are actually going to do.
My lineup would be either Zach Banner or Joe Haig at right tackle. Keep Dan Moore Jr. at left tackle, and tell Chuks Okorafor that he won free tickets to Nickelback and he doesn't have to come to the game.
Oh my gosh. Do you think he's been that bad? I mean, that's Nickelback. Like, that's bad.
Seriously. Nickelback bad.
So you said that's what you would do. What do you think the Steelers are going to do?
Chuks Okorafor at left tackle, Zach Banner or Joe Haig at right tackle.
All right, Dave, you do the same exercise. What do you think?
Yeah, and I kind of agree with Bryan there, but I'll be honest with you. If everyone is back and healthy, and if the Steelers want to take a couple weeks, even if it's just until the bye, to kind of do a little bit of a reset of Dan Moore, if you know what I mean, this would be the time to do it because you have the excuse of people coming back health-wise. Hold him out for a couple games and then say, hey, after the bye, we're going to try to plug you back in, see what you can do. You know what I'm saying? If not, if you stay with Dan Moore at left tackle now, then you stay with him the rest of the season. And I have unless it gets really, really bad, I have no problem with them doing that. But if they wanted to have the way the Steelers do it and all those kind of things, then this would be the time to do it if Banner comes off and everything. But I have to admit that I thought Joe Haig, held his own there at right tackle. You didn't really, you didn't notice him, which is usually a good thing.
Yeah.
When it comes to the offensive line.
I can't get Dan Moore getting bull rushed like crazy out of my head. I mean, there's a part of me that thinks Chuks Okorafor, if he is a strength, it's in pass protection. He's just not a good run blocker. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think that, I wrote the article and I said that I think they're going to have Chuks at left tackle, Banner at right tackle. I still think that's what they're going to do if they deem that Banner is healthy enough to play a full game, which if he's not, they shouldn't bring him back. Don't bring him back until he's actually ready to play. So, and he did admit, by the way, in that interview that he had a setback versus Detroit in that playoff game or preseason.
And he said he couldn't say what it was.
That's the Steelers.
Maybe they didn't want him to say what it was.
Well, they did everything the right way. They put him on injured reserve, and so they don't have to say anything. They don't have to. Anyways.
And the Steelers have seen Animal House way too many times. Double secret probation.
Okay.
All right. Let's get to the injury report, Dave. Go ahead and read the Steelers' latest injury report.
Okay, well, I will start off. There was a new player on the injury report today. We have another Sam Malone. Because
this
once
is
again,
insane.
I know it's another groin injury. And this time it was James Washington showing up, limited on Thursday with a groin injury. So we'll have to see how that's when you just have no clue how to even begin to gauge that one. Because if he did something where he hurt it in practice, because he was practicing and then got hurt, he could very well be out Friday and out beyond. Or was it, well, he was a little sore, so let's just not have to do much. Don't know. We'll have to see tomorrow. So from there, let's talk about players who did not practice. The players who did not practice on Thursday was Carlos Davis for I was going to say the second straight day this week, but it's been, my goodness, 4 weeks now, right? Rashad Coward moved in the wrong direction from limited on Wednesday to nothing on Thursday, did not practice. And Cam Sutton was another did not practice. And by the way, Keith Butler was talking, I almost said the wrong name. Keith Butler was talking in his press conference today. It doesn't sound like he thinks he's going to be available Sunday. You want to talk about them or just keep rolling?
Go, just keep. I'm so sick.
Okay.
I'm so sick of the groin injuries.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Chase Claypool hamstring limited for the second straight day. Juju Smith-Schuster with his ribs, he was moving in the right direction. He was full today after being limited yesterday. Of course, BTR, he was back after his Wednesday off, but that was the pectoral / hip, but he was back as a full. Trey Turner, who had missed Wednesday because of an illness, or was limited Wednesday because of an illness, was back to full. Kevin Dotson, that was the one that surprised me. He went from not practicing Wednesday to full on Thursday. That was actually a bit of a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting that. And then the only other one that I've missed so far is Cam Hayward, who was limited with a neck injury where he said, it's just kind of a little something that bothers him, and it has been for a while. So he took it a little bit easy yesterday, but he was back to full today.
Okay, let's talk about Cam Sutton. I think that's the biggest injury right now. It doesn't look like he's going to be playing. So if Cam Sutton doesn't play, what the heck are the Steelers doing at cornerback, in your opinion? Brian, we'll start with you.
Pray.
Play hard. Play hard.
But yeah, they're going to go out there and play hard.
Or pray hard.
Yeah.
So, you're putting Juan Pierre back there, and I know his name's not Juan, but I can't get Juan Pierre out of my head, so that's just who he is. So James Pierre, number 42, will get his shot on that side again. We will probably have a Lustin Jane sighting, which I'd rather see the Yeti and Bigfoot hanging out together than a Lustin Jane sighting. But gosh, what are you going to do when the Hulkster runs wild on you? And that's what's happening right now. But they cannot 2 steps forward, 1 step forward, 17 steps back. I don't know what I'm saying. Opposites attract, I guess. But what's going on here is you just have, we got a guy back from injury. We see it on the injury report. The Steelers get this guy back. Claypool's back. Woo! Okay, now here's our door number 2. This is the guy that is on crutches right now. It's Cam Sutton this week, and James Washington's hanging out with him. So it just seems like that's what the narrative for the Steelers with injuries are this season. But they're going to have to rely on Pierre again, and they didn't have a hard time doing it before. He's not horrendous. He's not going to be on your Pro Bowl ballot or you're like, ooh, should I put James Pierre in here? But, he's serviceable. I guess that's the word that they used to use all the time.
Opposites attract. Was that Paula Abdul?
Yes. And MC Scat Cat. I'm surprised Dave didn't know MC Scat Cat.
I knew it was the cartoon cat in the video. I didn't know his actual name.
2 steps.
I can't believe you just quoted Paula Abdul during the show. Okay. Dave, cornerback, do you agree with what Brian said?
For the most part, I think I don't know that we'll have a Lustin Jane sighting. I don't know, because I believe that chances are you see James Pierre play 100% of the snaps. You're like, well, James Pierre would come in before. That's because Sutton would move to that, dime safety kind of role, I guess is the best way to describe it. I don't stare at the secondary. I'm usually looking at the defensive line. But Jeffrey could tell us that much better. But I think someone else is going to have to then fill that role. So, and I don't know that it's going to be a corner, if you understand what I'm saying. It might be maybe
Trey Norwood,
or maybe they'll use Miles Killebrew or something for something like that. I don't know. I think that you're going to see Pierre basically play every snap along with Joe Hayden is what I would assume. But believe it or not, those sub-package guys like Arthur Mollett and Trey Norwood have been playing well. They've been some of the stronger guys in the secondary. So they might just have a few more snaps.
Now, another injury to keep your eye on is Chase Claypool on Friday. He's limited the last 2 days, as Dave said. But with James Washington suffering an injury now, if they're both out, well, now you're into Ray McLeod territory, where you're relying on number 14 to actually make plays that isn't just fair catching a football. So that's not where you want to be on an offense. If Chase Claypool comes back, then James Washington can take a week off. Will be fine as an offense, the Steelers. But my gosh, I think that James Washington has value as the primary backup. But when you're missing Claypool and Washington, that's a little different dynamic. Brian, what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I actually think Cody White is probably more of an option than Ray McLeod. Really? I mean, as far as trucking him out there, I mean, what do you think, Dave? I mean,
no. It's my thing. The problem with Cody White is they've used this 2 elevations for him. If they elevate him again, he has to be subject to waivers.
Okay, yeah.
So
but
unless they change that rule that I'm not aware of, that's what it was going into last season, and I just assume it's the same thing for this year.
But so, I think with what we saw last week, he is more of a downfield game than Ray McLeod. I think that they would look at him first. Having Washington out is a problem because this is going to sound like I'm making a joke, but I'm not. I mean, Deontay Johnson's due to go down again this week, and because he every 2 weeks he limps off, and then he's gone for a little bit. Then he's okay, guys, I'm back. It just seems like he is always walking off the field for some reason, but he's so valuable to that team. I just never expect four full quarters out of this guy 2 weeks in a row.
No, that's a good point. Dave, what are your thoughts on the receiver position?
It's so hard. Like I was saying, whenever we were talking about what the injury report was, you really don't know what to expect with that James Washington. You don't know if that's another big deal. I mean, you don't want to worry about, groin injury is not a good thing for a wide receiver, obviously. So, but neither is a hamstring. So I think the one to watch more closely is Chase Claypool. I said it last year. I'll say it again this year. The Steelers can afford to be down 1. It's when you're down more than 1 that it's a problem because of what they have.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. All right. Arthur Steele gives us $1.99, says, do you expect the offensive line being decent as the season goes on? I think we all admitted that the offensive line was better. It's still not good, but better. So what exactly do you guys think about the offensive line moving forward, especially with some of these players returning? Dave, we'll start with you.
I thought they had a better game, collectively last week, and for some players, individually, that individually and collectively, as we hear that all the time from Coach Tomlin. But I thought Kendrick Green had his best game as a pro by far. I thought that Kevin Dotson was moving in the right direction before his injury, but therefore it kind of brings it all together a little bit more. It's a work in progress, and all you can do is hope that every week they're improving to where they finally get to a point that we're like, hey, this offensive line isn't that bad. That's ultimately where you're wanting to get to, and then keep going from there. So the question isn't will they? The question is when will they? And the answer might, you're hoping that it's soon, and the answer isn't next season or beyond 2021, if you know what I mean.
Right. What about you, Brian? What do you think?
I agree with the consistency that Dave's looking for with this team. I'm looking for cohesiveness, which is probably going to be turned upside down again because you're putting someone else back in there. We need to see the same 5 every week, and when I say we, the fans, the media, the backers of the Pittsburgh Steelers really want to see this. because that's how this unit is going to get better. Are they going to be getting better? Yeah, I think they're going to continue to gel. I think, anybody that's complaining about Adrian Clem right now, remember, this is in some ways, this is patchwork. And this is a project that they're putting together. You have 2 rookies starting on there. We don't know what's going on with the plan for Dan Moore Jr., whether they're going to halt that experiment for right now. They very well could. And something that I talked about earlier, they don't Wally Pip a lot here in Pittsburgh. And I don't expect Shooks to get Wally pipped, which means he's out because he has an injury and comes back and loses his job. I fully expect him to be starting and playing where I'm not sure, but once again, you're not going to have a cohesive unit because it's a new unit. And one thing that with an offensive line, you have 5 pieces working as one guy. With everything else, I mean, even though you have a wide receiver unit with sometimes 4 guys on the field, they're not working as one guy. They're working as 4 separate guys, usually. But the offensive line, you need them to be a strong fence. And when you keep moving some of those links around, when one of those links is rusting out or breaking, that's the problem. And that's something that I've learned. I thought different in preseason, but I'm seeing it more and more with this line that it takes a while for them to become who they are. We applauded Alejandro Villanueva for so many years. But remember, in 2015, there were a lot of people saying, wow, you've got this big rookie at left tackle. How suspect is he? And it took a while for him to be the Pro Bowl player that it was. Not a long while, but it took him a while to gel with the rest of that lineup, and that was a very solid line for a while. There were a lot of question marks on that line, but when they grew together, they grew big. So I'm expecting good things out of this line in the future, and the difference of this line from week 2 to week 17, week 18, it's going to be huge.
Okay, let's talk about the title of this podcast, which is, is the Steelers season on life support? Is this game pretty dire? And I did say when we were in our Slack channel talking about headlines for this show, I had said must win. I was like, no, let's not do that because it's not a must win game. A must win game, as Dave would likely tell us, is a game that you have to win or else your season is over or you are eliminated from the postseason. That's not this. It's not week 5. But I don't think you can say that this game is not important.
Yeah.
It's a very stark difference between 1 and 4 going into one last game at home before your bye week and 2 and 3 with a chance to get back to 500 before your bye week. But gentlemen, I want to ask you just a general question, man. Is this season like hanging in the balance in terms of where this thing is going? It kind of feels like they're on a precipice, and it could go over or they could back it up and still make something out of it. Dave, what do you think?
I think you're exactly right. I think it's poop or get off the pot time. You've got to get moving with this season if you're going to just want to stay in contention. Now, I've said it before. I went into it with a long soliloquy on StatGeek this morning that don't go looking at, oh, wow, you got the Broncos this week. Well, the next week you've got, and now I understand looking forward to know when your bye week is because that's important to know. But then you've got the Seahawks and then you've got the Browns. Oh, how are the Steelers going to get to 9 wins? You know what? They got to get to 2 wins first. So they need to just forget everything else. You've got to get that second win. And until you get that second win, you can't be going for that second win in the end of October and think that you're going to be relevant at the end of the season. So it really is, it's not a do or die, but it's because by definition it's not, but it really is up there in the importance of the Steelers defining their season, because you can, like you said, 2 and 3 home game, prime time, going into your bye at a chance to be 500. That's doable. 1-4, it's like, where do you go from here? Not just because you're 1-4, but because it's 4 straight losses. It's those 4 losses in a row.
Bryan, what do you think about that?
Well, Dave's right, but I look at it a little bit different. Life support is when you call the family in. You're not calling the family in yet. Now, when they're at 1-4, you're calling the family in, and when you get to 1-5, that's when you're coding, and that's when the priest comes in and gives the last rites. Now, 1-4, we saw this 2 years ago, Jeff, Dave, and it was a much different season in 2019. But they were actually 1-4 when Juju fumbled that ball, when who got knocked out in that game? Mason Rudolph gets knocked out in that game. Duck comes in and almost brings them back. The next thing you know, where I'm spooning with Dave with 3 games left in the season, and basically they need to win one of them to go to the playoffs. They ended up 8-8 that year, but they win one of those games, they're in the postseason.
They wouldn't run the Wildcat.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Way to go, Bryan. Now he's going to talk about that for a
Hey,
next segment.
I had 5 hours through the snow.
Yeah.
And so, so I mean, we're so quick to call the priest, and they're doing that in the live chat right now. But I'm with Dave, where I'm looking at it as not as a 1-game Bill Cowher season. I'm not looking at it that way. I'm looking at it as just focus on this week and nothing else. They really need to win this game, but the plug doesn't get pulled until they're 1-5 at that point.
Go, Dave.
Oh, I was just going to say, look at Jeff Hartman. Look at him as our great example. When you look at the season as a whole, what did you have for the Steelers record? I remember. Do you remember what you had for the Steelers record before the season started?
When? For this part of the season?
No, just in general. When the schedule came out,
17-0?
No, you had them 12-5.
Did I really?
You had them 12-5.
Okay.
When you looked at the season as a whole.
Right.
But what do you do when you look at each individual game? You believe that they can and will win it.
Absolutely.
That's how the Steelers have to look. That's my point. And it's not even just the Steelers. It's us as Steelers fans, which we aren't used to being like this. That rather than say, oh my goodness, well, they're never going to beat this team in December. It's not December. It's October. You got to win the next one, and then win the next one, and then get better during your bye, and then win the next one, if you know what I'm saying. That when you look at it as a whole, you can find the places, well, I don't know that they can do this one. But if you look at it week by week, you can feel like they can win every game.
Arthur Steele gives us $4.99. He said, I've accepted and am at peace that the Steelers are probably not a playoff team as of now. I just want to see good, solid, physical, and smart Steelers football. I think that a lot of Steeler fans, and I think I would lump myself into this category as well, I just want to see them look competent and be competitive. Mm-hmm. Be in every game. We haven't been able to say that this season. They have not been. And Las Vegas, I thought was close until the Ruggs touchdown. The Cincinnati game might have been the worst game of the year so far.
Oh, absolutely.
And they just looked like absolute trash. And last week, there were moments where you're thinking, boy, I'm shocked it was only 10 points. So I want to see the Steelers with a lead, just a lead.
Yeah.
It's not.
Hey,
not
a 7-0.
Not a lead, and the other team hasn't gotten the ball, like an actual lead. Like you said today in your stat geek,
7-0 and had the ball, but they were like at their own 10-yard line.
But Dave, you said in your stat geek, right, that they've never gone into halftime with a lead yet this season, have they?
No, the last time they had a lead at halftime was against Washington last year, the game that ended the winning streak. They had the lead at halftime. Since then, they have not had the lead at halftime. And that's why I got so upset with that call at the end of the first half that, the 10-point swing is because I would have loved to seen how this team responded leading at halftime because we haven't seen it for so long. So that was, it might not have been any better, but it would have been nice to see it. Maybe this is the week we get to see them leading at halftime.
The funny thing is that if players criticize the officials or something like that, they get fined heavily. When the officials make a blatant missed call, what happens with them? Do they get fined? I don't know. They might. I doubt it. That ticks me off. I still can't believe it. And Minka Fitzpatrick, who was interviewed today, was met with media, was blatant and said, we were not offsides.
Well,
None of us were offsides.
Did you see Danny Smith's quote?
I didn't see Danny Smith's quote.
I didn't watch. I watched. I mean, I saw it typed up. I didn't hear it, but in essence, he said, "I'm not allowed to comment on it." But we weren't offsides, so I'm like,
not allowed to comment, but I'm going to comment anyways. And we have a lot of comments coming up. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk about over/under. I have some fun questions to kind of break up the monotony of losing for Dave and Bryan, and then we'll do our predictions. So stay tuned. If you're on YouTube or Facebook right now, the YouTube or the Facebook, stay tuned. We're not going anywhere. If you're on the audio side, go over to part 2. We'll be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back. Welcome back to part 2 of the Steelers preview. I'm Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. For those of you that are watching on the Bill Belichick InstaFace app, that's on YouTube or Facebook, welcome. I know you all have been with us for the both parts. Our Facebook community is the largest of everything. I think we have over 100,000 followers on Facebook, and our YouTube channel is growing. I think we're nearing 8,000 subscribers. So if you're just finding this video, hit the like button, subscribe. We appreciate it. And I'm joined as always by Bryan Anthony Davis and Dave Schofield. All right, let's I wanted to ask you guys some questions. I said this earlier when we were talking about what we wanted to do with the show. I said, I just felt like it's been the same thing for the last 3 weeks. Like it really has been, and everyone's losing. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to mix it up. I want to talk about the Steelers fan base. I want to ask you all some questions about the fans. Because we are fans, but we also interact with fans in a different way. So whether it's Twitter, whether it's the comment section of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, or whether it's here in the live chat for those that are watching live. My first question is, we all know Steeler fans that are annoying, okay? It doesn't mean that you don't talk about the team, but there can be some annoying fans in Steeler Nation. All right, so what is the most annoying thing that some fans do to you? Like not to you, but that do in general. Bryan, I'm going to start with you. Like, what's that one thing that if a fan does, you're like, oh gosh, super, super cringe here?
Oh gosh, there's a few of them. I'm gonna actually dig down deep on this one, and I'm going to say Steelers just don't know how to draft.
That's a good
one.
We
know. We've heard this from Bryan before. And you're exactly right. I love it.
I've done entire shows on this where I've broken it down.
They don't know how to draft. So that's a good one. Dave, what about you?
It drives me nuts. And it's funny because this is almost every Steeler fan that does this. So I'm sorry, all Steelers Nation. It drives me nuts when we assume that what we see is everything going on.
Yeah.
There is so much more to this team inside the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex and not in practice, in meetings, which is probably the majority of it. That's one. I have another one I want to bring up too. But I'll finish this.
You better not take mine. You better not take mine.
I'll let you go, and then I want to jump.
Like 17, okay? I want to bring up.
Okay, but the whole notion that what we see, we know so much better what they should do because we can identify exactly what's happening it's an iceberg. We're lucky if we see that 10% above the surface because so much of what's going on is that 90% under the ocean.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Mine is the fan that doesn't know the team.
So I knew that's what you were going to say.
So they're watching the game. Oh, these guys stink. Who is that? Who's that guy? Or you see him after, it's spring. Hey, what'd you think about the draft? Oh, who did they get? Or they say we, which is another thing that bothers me.
Yeah.
Who did we get? Well, we didn't get anyone. They did, but we didn't. But so how do you not know? How do you not know? I remember I used to work with a teacher. I'm not going to say names or anything, but this individual labeled themselves the number one Steeler fan, labeled themselves, had a jersey with it on it, had it like a sticker for their car. And I'll never forget my first year teaching with this individual. Don't teach with them anymore. I said, hey, what did you think about the draft? Who? And I'm like, you didn't watch the draft? What? Was that this weekend? I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So then I tell this teacher who they drafted, knew nothing about the play. I was like, you know what? You call yourself the number one fan, yet you don't even know the team. Don't even know the team. I don't know.
You know,
Yeah.
And then, by the way, Tyler W. brings it up. He said, I said that with Witherspoon. Now, look, Ahkello Witherspoon, when the Steelers traded for him, I even said, who the heck is this guy? I don't know all of the NFL, but I do know the Steelers players. We'll put it that way. So, Brian, did you have another one you wanted to bring up?
Well, actually, I want to piggyback on yours because one of the most famous games that you could remember, one of the most famous mishaps in a game was when James Harrison was the long snapper in
against the Giants.
October of 2008 against the Giants. I was there, and I had my radio on, and I said to the people around me, I'm like, Greg Warren got hurt. Man, that's gonna stink. Everybody around me, season ticket holders, were like, who's Greg Warren? I'm like, what? You don't know who Greg? Sure, he's the long snapper. You're not going to get your number 60 jersey. I get that. You don't have a trading card of Greg Warren. I know, but it was just one of those things that, yeah, there's some people that claim that don't know who these guys are. Now, everybody in our live chat, I will say that they know that they know the team well, and they know who a Greg Warren or a Mike Schneck from the past. They know who these guys are. So I get that. But if I had to say one, and I will indict the live chat in this, and I will just say, gives up way too early. Just doesn't put the perspective in. There has not ever been, the only time there's been a 17-0 team was when they won the Super Bowl back in 1972, and that was the Miami Dolphins. You're not going to see that 17-0 team for the entire season. It's just not going to happen. And so that's kind of something that drives me absolute crazy, that you just give up real quick. You realize that teams are going to lose. Even look at baseball. Your greatest teams, still lose. Some of the greatest teams of all time still lost 40 games that season. So that's something to look at there. So that's something that kind of now, Wes, I actually didn't call Wes out there. But I mean, Wes had a good
no,
point.
I can vouch for this one because I've watched games at Brian's house before, and I know people that watch games with Brian. And
one of my best friends in the world. Yeah, they give up.
I know what he's saying.
I played trivia with the same gentleman that Dave's talking about. One of my best friends in the world. We would miss one question. We would miss one question in the first round all night. Slam the pen down. We stink.
We're done.
And then we win by 30 points. I mean, there's just some negative people, and I got to understand that there's negativity. Wes did say earlier in the live chat, the fact that that you have fans that aren't completely optimistic to the fact that people get mad that when they're not optimistic. You're allowed to be negative and pessimistic towards your team, but I'm just saying, give it time. I mean, don't give up with the first touchdown scored against you, and you're losing 14-0 or whatever against Buffalo, and then we're done.
It's a good one. Dave, you had another one.
I have two more.
Go for
okay.
it.
One of them is, and I know this is going to maybe ruffle some feathers, I'm sorry, but the whole absolutely obsessed with Ben Roethlisberger practicing on Wednesdays. That kind of drives me nuts, because what drives me crazy is we've actually had people, this, I don't think it wasn't the live chat. I'm pretty sure it was on the website, but it might've been someone who does the live chat as well. Literally thought he sat at home all day on Wednesdays. I'm like, he's at the building to do his interview. Do you think he leaves and goes back home? And the thing is, they think just because he's not doing the team portion of practice that he's not working, that he's not involved in the game plan, that he's not working on something technical with his form. He might just not be throwing the ball. He might be working on his footwork. He might be working on memorizing the game plan. He might have a bunch of other things that he's doing that I think they put so much stock in the fact that he's not out there in team time on Wednesday because he has to then show up on the injury report. People were so obsessed with that. It doesn't mean that he's not working. And also, as Coach Tomlin has said, that it means that What would you rather have with your 39-year-old quarterback? Someone who got more work in at practice but hasn't recovered to actually be able to throw the ball and then is sore all the way until the next game, or give him that the recovery time that the old man needs? Okay, that's one. Another one is going to ruffle some feathers too, because I don't mind when people say this, but it's your attitude about it. And that is, I've been a fan since the 70s. That drives me nuts just because I know it's great that you've been a fan since the 70s. It really is. But if you think that just because you've been a fan since the 70s that you instantly know more than everybody else, that's not. My dad's been a fan since the 70s, and he knows he doesn't know as much about it as I do. You know, I guess I technically couldn't have been a fan in the 70s because I would have been 2 when the time it was over. But that's great that you were, but don't think that means that anyone who was a fan since then can't know nearly as much as what you do, because everybody's different. Sorry.
It's also the people that say they want to write. I want to write for the website. I've been a fan since the 70s. Can you put sentences together that make coherent thoughts?
You know, I'm kind of thinking of that as well. You know, just
I want to do a podcast. Have you ever talked on the microphone outside of to someone? Anyways, we have some super chats to get to. I wanted to break up a little bit.
Hey, Felicia
gives us $5. Thank you to watch the games, watch any games, but did I miss something? Explain the Aaron Rodgers coming to Steelers. Love you all. So this, I think, started, obviously Steelers fans wanted Aaron Rodgers when things started going south in Green Bay, but I think also when he went on Pat McAfee, which he does every Tuesday, it's really a great segment if you get to listen to it. He's very honest about the NFL, the life in the NFL, and he spoke very glowingly of Pittsburgh, and he knew a lot of stuff about the town, the Tan, and he even mentioned Pittsburgh Dad, Brian's favorite comedian. And
did you see Pittsburgh Dad's response?
Yeah, he said, "What did he?"
Week. No, this week they recorded something for the Pat McAfee show. Just look at Pat McAfee on Twitter or look at Pittsburgh Dad. He liked it where they shared it. He recorded a video for Aaron Rodgers that they played for Aaron Rodgers. It was, and then he got on. Then he started going off on AJ Hawk, and it was just it was good stuff.
I'm back on. I'm actually on the bandwagon now. I finally put my professional jealousy aside. The fact that he's actually funnier than me, and I've come to grips with it. I'm fine with Pittsburgh Dad now.
So I think it's a combination of Aaron Rodgers likely going to be able to go somewhere else next season. Him showing some love
season or the season after.
I don't know.
I thought it was the season after.
I think it's after this season. I don't know. But then you throw in like Ben Stonium, who I know the people over there. They're great people, really funny. They did a whole Adele video with Mike Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers like winking and grinning at each other. It was really funny.
Was it hello?
Yes, it was.
I love Ben Stonium.
Like, honestly, go to Ben Stonium and look that video up. It's really, really funny. And then they throw in like Ben Roethlisberger. It's great. I think it's a combination of all of that, Felicia, to answer your question. Now, Grayson, he gave us $10. Thank you very much. I haven't seen Grayson as much this season. He said, first, every player that is a free agent is coming to the Steelers. Second,
the Michael Beck effect.
The Beck effect.
The Beck effect. It's like a Canadian cold front. All right. Second, living in the spoiled past, expecting greatness every season with unrealistic expectations. Grayson's obviously talking about all of the things that annoy him about Steelers fans. I agree, Grayson. Thank you for the tip. We appreciate it. It's good to see you again. And, every player is going to the Steelers. Every single player, for sure. Sean Manning gives us
2 of them this week.
Yeah, Sean Manning gives us $2. Just be happy we have Coach T and not Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer's clubbing it up somewhere. Yeesh.
Yeah,
that's rough.
Just to follow up on stuff. Aaron Rodgers is under contract in 2022. It's 2023 that he has a void year.
But I think that they're shopping him after this season, though.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of an agreement they came to, but that's technically what his contract is right now, according to Over the Cap. So
according to Over the Cap. Okay.
Yes.
All right. That was good. I wanted to break up the monotony of beating the dead horse that is Ben Roethlisberger struggles and all the other stuff. So I was like, you know what? Let's have some fun and let's talk about fans for a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do a little over-under here. Over-under. Y'all ready? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Ben Roethlisberger attempts. I'm going to keep the line the same as last week. 42.5 over under. Dave, what do you think?
What was he last week?
I think, was it 40?
something like I'm
I
not
think
sure.
he
I'm
was
going.
40.
Yeah, I was just curious how we did last week since you kept it the same line. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go under. I think it's
It
close,
doesn't
but
matter
not
what.
that.
Sorry.
It doesn't matter what the line was. Sorry,
So you're saying under. Okay, Brian,
I'll go on.
over under 42 and a half.
I'm going under. The running game gets going. Helps them out.
Yeah, I'm using my heart here, not my head. Under. Najee Harris rushing yards, 65 and a half. Dave?
65 and a half. Rushing yards. You would think that they would progress and build, but my goodness, does Denver have a good rush defense? You know, they just have a good defense in general.
Yeah.
So, you know what? I'm going to say over because if the Steelers have a lead in the second half, they might have a tendency to run the ball more. And that's what I'm hoping happens. I'm not saying it will. That's just my hope and a prayer. So I will say over.
Brian?
I'm actually saying over too, because I think the rushing game is going to help out Ben, like I just said. I kind of think Dave's right, but the way that running game was going last week in the 4.1 yards a carry, I think he's going to get close to 20 carries this week.
I'm going to go under because this is not a heart pick. This is a head pick. I just don't think that they're going to run the ball that much. Najee Harris receiving yard. Set this one at 45 and a half. So receiving yards, 45 and a half. Dave, go ahead.
Let's see, like he had the big week the week before, but last week he was at 29. So you know what? This week, oh my goodness, I should have been smart and gone under on the rushing yards and over on this one. So if not, I almost feel like I have to then go under on this one because I don't think he does both of them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Brian, what do you think?
I'm going to say under. I've been hoping he was going to break off that big one, but it just seems like that game plan is not consistent every single week, and I don't know why. So I just don't really see that. Dave's right. If they're going to go ahead and if he's going to go ahead and have a decent running game, I don't think that they're throwing him a bunch of passes.
I'm going to go under as well. I think Najee Harris is going to have a rather mundane week. All right, let's go with Pat Freiermuth receptions. I think he's going to have a game. I set the line at 4.5. Dave, what do you think about that?
Going under just because I would love for that more than anything. But does he even have that many? I mean, other than one game, does he even have that many targets in a game? I mean, he was targeted one time last game, and he was wide open on fourth down for a first down, and he still
called that,
targeted.
by the way. I called that, Dave. You heard me.
Well,
all right.
They weren't going to use him
wide open. No, when he went in motion, I was like, no one's
and
covering him.
Yeah.
Brian, over under 4.5.
Over. They're going to need him if there's no James Washington and possibly no James Claypool, no Chase Claypool. So
James is his brother.
Yeah. So I mean, really, James Roethlisberger is going to have to find James Freiermuth over the middle right now. They're going to need some help there.
Jimmy.
Yeah. And then there's Pat Claypool. That's his American cousin.
Yeah.
Hey, Jesse James Freiermuth. There you go.
Yeah.
Jesse caught the ball. Okay, quarterback hit surrendered. Von Miller over there, 6.5.
Ooh.
Dave, over under.
Well, they did less last week, right? They only gave up. Hold on, I can
6,
find
I
this real
think.
quick. No, they gave up 5 quarterback hits last week.
Oh.
So
10, 7, they 5, cut right? It in half. So, but you said it at what? 6 and
6.5.
6.5. I'm going to go barely under. I'm going to think it's 6. I think it's because they're just too good of a defense.
Okay, Brian.
Barely under 6.
I'm going to say over. I think Ben gets hit a good bit, but it might just be 7, but that's still over.
Yeah.
All right, and let's go with TJ Watt sacks, 2.5. Dave, what do you think?
I'll go.
He tripped his way to 2 last week.
I know. I know. The one was a trip, and the other was where Rodgers slid and he touched it.
Yep.
So it's really going to depend on who's quarterbacking for Denver. We haven't even talked about that, but I'm going to say 2.5. I'm going to say under. We'll go with. I think he does a good job if he gets 2.
It would be a good job. Brian, what do you think?
So James Harrison's team record is 16, and you know what's going to happen? He is going to go ahead and break James Harrison's record, and he's going to do it in this game, but not the 16, 80. The 80.5 he's going to break. So I'm going to say 36 for TJ Watt this week. Over. He's going to have a good game. He's over.
36.
DJ Finney?
Honestly,
DJ Finney an answer?
That was no. That was so crazy. I'm like, I thought you pulled a Seattle has 2 losses for a second. I'm like, oh no. Okay, he got it.
I'm gonna go.
He's not gonna quite get 36, but he's gonna be over. He's gonna have a good game.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go under.
So you're saying more than 2.5, but less than 36. That's what you're going with.
Yeah, that's the range.
That's his range.
He's gonna fall into that range. And the last one here, and this is a different one, and I really hate to even bring this up, but I asked Brian this on Let's Ride when he joined me. Games played by Stephon Tuitt in 2021.
Oh.
The over-under is 7. I'll go with Brian first because he already answered this, so he should know, and I'll give Dave some time to think. Brian, go ahead.
I went under, and I'm not sure if he plays any games this season.
Dave?
Well, if you're looking at the bye week, there's still only 10 games after that. So to me, just looking at it statistically, the wise statistical bet would be under. And Brian could be right. It could be none.
What happens contractually if that happens? Does his contract, if he doesn't even play and he's on injured reserve all year, does his contract toll?
I don't know if it does with injured reserve.
Well, what was the difference between that and Shazier?
I know it would if he was PUP. I know it would if he would have been put on PUP to start the season. That you could do that. I'm not sure. I would have to research that a little bit.
I was going to say, well, that's a great question. Why wasn't he on PUP? And what was the difference between Shazier's injury and his then in terms of the labeling of the injury, not the injury itself?
The thing is, if you put someone on PUP, they can't come back before the 6th week of the season.
I know that.
So the only question is, wasn't Tuitt at least in uniform and doing some drills at some point?
I don't know if he was ever doing anything other than working out like alongside TJ Watt.
But if you're on PUP, I don't think you could even. I don't even know if you can do that. Right. I don't know. I'd have to look into it more. Ooh.
I don't think this is an indictment on Tuitt. There's something really wrong with him.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, he has a knee injury. That's something that Keith Butler kind of let the cat out of the bag on that one. And then obviously he's mourning the death of his brother after that hit and run accident down in Georgia this summer. So, yeah. Okay, that was just a random one there at the end. Good over under there. Let's talk about this game coming up. We don't know who the quarterback is for the Denver Broncos. Teddy Bridgewater did return to practice. Count me as stunned. I did not think that a player that was in the NFL's concussion protocol would ever be able to play that same week. Yet Teddy Bridgewater, who was in that protocol, started back limited on Thursday, didn't practice on Wednesday. It really does become a coin toss on who's going to play. I feel like, I was on a radio show with a Denver radio, whatever, today, and they asked me, like, what's your prediction? I said, I really feel like it depends on who's the quarterback. I would almost have a different prediction for Teddy Bridgewater than I would Drew Lock. But nonetheless, Dave, is the line still a half a point? The Steelers giving a half?
I meant it is on Tally site for where we do our picks. I was checking real quick here with Odd Shark because Odd Shark had it at 1 was the last that I saw it. But now it's the consensus on Odd Shark is even. Probably because Bridgewater was limited today.
Okay. So it's Vegas. It's a pick-em game, essentially.
Yeah. And the over-under is 39.5. 39.5.
Vegas knows. I thought it was going to be a low-scoring game anyways. But all right, let's do our predictions, and then we'll do bold predictions. We'll finish with trivia. So, Dave, let's go with you first. What's your prediction for this game?
My prediction, is I said on Stat Geek, is that I think points are going to be at a premium. People are like, well, yeah, look, the Steelers' offense isn't there. It's not just that. It's also that Denver's defense does not give up points. I think they're averaging just over 12 points a game given up. Pitching a shutout will do that. But their offense doesn't have a lot of points scored for them either. So I'm thinking it's going to be a low scoring affair. But I'm going to be in stadium. So that makes it a little bit different. And I really wish I knew which quarterback was playing, because I think it's going to make a huge difference. And you say, how much of a huge difference? All it takes is one drive being a touchdown and not a field goal. That could change everything in this game. And a splash play is going to mean so much more in a low scoring game than it does in a high scoring game. Think about that. If you can get a pick six and the final scores, but neither team gets to the 20s, how much more impact does that have in the game? So things like that could really throw it off. But I'm just going to go 17-13, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I like it. Bryan Anthony Davis, what's your prediction?
First of all, I don't think Denver. I think Denver has a potential to be a good team. I just don't think they're there yet. And we're crowning them as a great team because they started out 3-0. But look who they beat: the New York Giants, the New York Jets, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Did they beat the Jets, or was it the
No, you are correct. I did that on
Texans.
Stat Geek this morning.
So
it's a combined record of like 5-11 of all the teams they've played.
And 3 of those wins are because of the Baltimore Ravens.
Exactly.
They were 0-9 at the end of week 3, and the Jets won last week. The Jaguars have not won, and the Giants won last week. But look, that's, when you're beating patsies and then you're starting to play better teams, you're going to see this team kind of morph back into who they really are. They might be at best a 9-8 team at best, but they are not a great team. And here's a question I'm going to ask everybody: when has Teddy Bridgewater become a football god? Because I don't think he is that great. So when Jeff, all due respect, Jeff, when you say it depends who's quarterback, I don't care who's quarterback in this game. Oh, you said that, Dave?
Yeah,
I said it too.
Yeah,
Jeff said it too.
Yeah.
I don't care who the quarterback on this team is this week. I think the Steelers, if their defense gets back to who they can be and they rush the passer, they're going to put this team in a conundrum, and they are going to knock them around. If that happens, if the offense finds themselves, this is a lot of ifs, but if they find themselves, they're going to be in a lot better shape. I could see a lot of field goals in this game by both teams, but when I see a lot of field goals, I'm thinking of the possibility of 4 field goals by Chris Boswell and 2 touchdowns by the Steelers. That's 26 points, and that's realistic. That's actually realistic to get 2 touchdowns and get those field goals. And I could see the Broncos with an opportunity to win the game with a field goal, but not get down close enough, kind of like last season. So I'm looking at 26-24 in favor of the Steelers.
Okay, I think that Bridgewater, if he does one thing, he protects the football.
Yeah.
That's the biggest difference for me. It's not so much of what he does different, like arm talent, strength, mobility, anything like that. No, I think he and Drew Lock are pretty comparable.
And that's huge.
Regard.
That's huge.
He protects the football. Drew Lock's going to take those chances, and that's where the Steelers could get an extra possession or two. I'm going to assume that Bridgewater's available. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game no matter what. I have the Steelers winning this one. I know, shocker. Pittsburgh 20, Denver 16. So I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think we all agree on that, which typically means it's going to be a shootout. So get ready. It's going to be a lot of scoring.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying, too, when I'm like, of course, if I do an entire podcast about how I think it's going to be, points at a premium, watch them both score in the 30s.
Final score, 49-37.
You basically have my same score, except you have each team with one more field goal.
Correct. So there you go.
Yeah.
We have trivia. Brian, do you have one too?
Yes, I do, and it's a relatively short one.
Let's do Brian's first then.
Oh, that's great, but tell us about your trivia.
Okay, so the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Denver Broncos have been playing this series since the early 70s, and in fact, I believe they played for the first time in 1970, which is true. And in this series, how many times have the Steelers won back-to-back games against the Denver Broncos?
Well, I'll tell you this, because I did these stats last year for the Denver game, and I'm trying to remember as much as I could. Denver, until the Steelers beat them last year, weren't they? They were like one of the worst teams that the Steelers had record against until they beat them last year. By beating them last year, it actually moved them ahead of, I think, the Bears, actually, of who the Steelers have the worst record against. So the question, how many times have they beat them back to back?
Yes.
I'm going to say none based on that, but either way, I think it's a small number.
I'm going to say 1.
Jefferson Hartman, come on down. You've actually got one right.
Hey.
Yeah. So, Dave is correct. 12, 20, and 1 is the record when these two teams play, and that 12 for the Steelers is the only it's not very good. And Dave's right. This is one of the worst opponents that they can ever get. Now, in a 10-month stretch, the Pittsburgh Steelers beat this team 3 times in 1978. In the regular season in 1978 on Monday Night Football. In the playoffs. In the playoffs, they beat them in, I believe it was December of that year. They were playing divisional games in December. Now we play them in April. And then the next season they beat them once again. So that was 3 games in a row, but never the rest of those games, 9 times, it was only a 1-game winning streak.
That makes sense.
9 times. All right, Dave, your trivia time.
Yeah, I figured it was either going to be 0 or 1, just based on that. My trivia is about the Pittsburgh Steelers and and starting their season being at 1-3. The Steelers have done this. I went back. I thought about only going back to 78 when they went to 16 games, but I went all the way back to the merger. I went back to 1970. And Steelers fans, we don't care about anything before that. 1 year before that's really all that matters, because it was when Chuck Noll started and Joe Green. But going back to 1970, the Steelers have started with a 1-3 record. Hold on. I gotta count them up again. I'm pretty sure it's 10 times. 10, or this is the 10th year, the 10th time that they've started with a record of 1-3. Now that's not counting 0-4. This is exactly 1-3. But in those times, the Pittsburgh Steelers have made the playoffs twice. So they actually have a better average than the league average and that's including this year, even if it's not, because really it's, I'm still counting 10 and not even 9, because we haven't finished the season yet, where they have made the playoffs. And not only that, they have even won a playoff game in both of those times that they made the playoffs, starting 1-3. Do you know what the 2 seasons were that the Steelers started 1-3 and made the playoffs?
Good,
Jeff,
Bryan,
go ahead.
I
know it absolutely. So you go ahead.
I don't know. Good.
Give me one of them, Jeff. Take a shot.
When they're 1-3 and made the playoffs?
They started 1-3 and they made the playoffs.
I literally don't know. Go ahead, Bryan. Just answer the question.
Tommy Maddox, 2002.
That they finished. What was their record? You remember?
10-6, or no? There was a tie.
There was a tie against
10,
Atlanta.
5-1. You are
Atlanta.
correct.
10,
They
5,
won. They won in the wild card. Lost in the division round.
Yep, Joe Nedney. I hate you.
Yeah,
Yes.
Tennessee Titans.
Don't get me
Gosh
started on that.
darn it! Don't start that.
And I believe 1974, the first year that they won the Super Bowl, didn't they start out 1-4?
It was not 1974. If they started 1-4, they might have started. When was
Then it was
that first win?
1976.
It was. You are correct. It's 1976 where they started 1-3. Both of those seasons they ended up with 10 wins. And remember, 76, it's only in 14 games. So those were the times that they made the playoffs still, even though they started 1-3. Now, I will also tell you this: the Steelers, the last time the Steelers started 1-3 and did not finish with at least 500, which is really tough to do this year because you need a tie to do it, was actually 1988. So ever since then, ever since 1990, which was the year they started 1-3, they've still managed to pull off, at least 8 wins. That they did it. 2019 they did it, and in 2006 they did it where they had 8 wins. But every other time it's been 9 or 10 wins. So the problem is when you start looking at when teams are 1-4. When they're 1-4, it's not good. Except in 1976, they started 1-4 and then won 9 straight games.
That's something else. That Tommy Gunn year was fun. The 2002 season was a lot of fun. It ended horribly, but it was a lot of fun. All right, let's do final thoughts quickly. We'll go with Bryan first. Go ahead.
All right, my final thought is absolutely this. Sure, a lot of people think that it's over now. I'm not ready to say it's over. Like I talked about earlier, I'm not ready to call for the priest. In fact, I'm thinking about that 2002 season and how there was a nice run in there after starting off 1-3. They lost their third game there to the New Orleans Saints, and everybody thought it was over then. But I actually think that this team is, just like the offensive line, is going to find their way together. And this is a team that loves to prove the doubters wrong. And I think they're tired of it. And I think they're ready to go ahead and start getting a little luck, make luck, and start getting some things on their side. I think you might be seeing 500 with this team very, very soon.
All right, Dave.
Yeah, I'm kind of going to piggyback off a little bit of what Bryan said and kind of reiterate some stuff I said earlier, dip back into the trivia and whatnot. Yeah, it's 1-3. It's not good, but it's all where you go from here. If you look at this as a 16-game season, like we have for how many years, the 17th game just kind of throws it in there, that they would have just finished their first quarter of the season. No team is out of the playoffs or playoffs in the first quarter of the season. You're just not. All it does is put you in a harder position later in the season based on things that happen now. Any team can turn it around at this time. Now, the problem is Steeler fans don't have the confidence in this team. The offense hasn't scored more than 17 points in a game. The defense, it seems like whether one position or another is dealing with injury and just, haven't been able to put it together since week 1. Like the way they did against Buffalo, who was absolutely stomping everybody ever since. So the thing is, you're only as bad as your next game. So remember that. Bottom line is that's why this game is so important. Why it's not the quote unquote do or die, because by definition, as Jeff laid that out, it's not like if you lose, you're out of the playoffs. But that's what this week is now. Everything is about this week and building from this week forward, because the Steelers just have to live in the present right now, and the present is preparing for week 5.
Well said. Well said. Well, I want to remind all the listeners out there that, BehindTheSteelCurtain.com should be your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers, and your podcast platform, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe so that you get all of those podcasts directly to your phone so you don't miss anything. Whether it's the Injury Report podcast, the Mike Tomlin recaps, all of our podcast lineup, morning, noon, evening, it's all there for you, so check it out. All right, gentlemen, good show. Let's hope the Steelers win. I will be there at the post-game show. Everyone was freaking out last week because I will
be there at the game, so
Dave
I will not be on
so
the post-game show.
But we having a third, Bryan?
Yeah, we have a player to be named later, and I'm not going to mention that yet. So, in fact, tune in to find out who is going to be on the show, and it's going to be really exciting. I think you're going to love it.
And make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, because if I can make sure I have signal and everything else, and can have, and they've been having a lot of difficulties with people with their service at the stadium because of all the electronic tickets. So I can't guarantee it, but that's the plan. Is we'll have at least one, if not two, YouTube live videos coming from the stadium on Sunday, as long as we can get that to work.
All right. Dave, why don't you send us out?
Hey.
Have a good day, everyone. We'll see you next week. Go Steelers.